mean by filter words?
Filter words are words that distance the reader from the story, from the character. If you say, she felt a pain pierce her heart, or she could see the, pain in his eyes. I don't know why I keep focusing on pain. But
it's because you've been here all day.
Exactly. But, instead of saying she felt, or he could see, or he could tell, just show that emotion. Pain filled his eyes. Pain pierced her heart. Give me some happy words. Joy.
Happiness.
Joy filled her heart. Not
Love.
She felt. Yes, she felt love for him. You don't need to say felt, heard, saw, thought. A lot of times they'll state a character's thought. This was going to be a great day, she thought. Well, if we're in her head and you state the sentence, we know that she thought it because we're in her head.
If you've established the viewpoint, it should be obvious.
Viewpoint, correct. And viewpoint's another very important thing, is to establish a viewpoint and stick with it in one scene. Do not, I see a lot of head hopping, which is when you go from, you're in one scene, but you go from one character's thoughts or, their mind, and then you pop into another character's head. That's right. Jarring for the readers, and they don't know who to connect with. So
right. They may not even be aware that you're head hopping.
Right.
What the reader's feeling is, I'm losing it. This isn't
right.
drawing me in.
Right, exactly. They want to connect deeply with the main POV character, and you want to keep them in that character's.
Excellent advice. Anything else? One more?
Not that I can think of right offhand.
For pushing my
exactly. I did my best.
Well, thanks, Allie. We're going to have another person speak now, Mary Jo Springer. She's the author of at least 4 books, the most recent one being For the Sheik's Pleasure. Mary Jo, you got a tip for us?
Yes, I came here today looking for factors to create inner conflict in my characters. Mm-hmm. And I found out that you should dive into your characters' insecurities, search for what's fueling their desperation to reach those goals, and challenge their honor and their integrity.
Mm-hmm. And how? How do you do that? How do you make that happen?
I think you have to really understand what's motivating your character on a real deep level, mm-hmm. and then try to bring that out.
Which doesn't mean dumping a lot of backstory, but bringing it out in what the character does.
Right, and kind of feathering that backstory just a little bit through the story.
That's great. Great advice. Okay, one more. Debbie Rogers, also with us here today at the retreat. Debbie, give us your writing tip.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, I'm excited that I got to be here today because I didn't know if I would or not, so I just wanted you to know how much I appreciated it.
Oh, glad you could make it.
I have 1 book published, that's all. So I'm working on my 2nd book, and I came here looking for help with dialogue, mm-hmm. specifically male point of view, but one of the things that I came away with was different information that was mm-hmm. very interesting. And when I was looking through, actually I got some of Bill's books. Okay.
Always a great idea.
Yes, it was. And I have a few of these books at home. I just didn't know which ones. And so I was looking through these books, and it occurred to me that when I taught English in high school, we talked an awful lot about adverbs, and right. I actually learned more once I started writing, after I retired, and now I'm writing stories. I finally figured out, and it was looking at one of your books, Bill, in one section it said, that watch out for these adverbs, or exactly, I can't remember what he said, what it was, but I understand it now because you throw in an adverb and you look at what the adverb is modifying, and it's basically restating right. the word, And so that has helped. That's helping my writing a lot, and I appreciate that.
If you've chosen the right verb, you shouldn't need the adverb,
Right, exactly. Oh, yes. And picking those strong verbs, absolutely. And leaving out the he said, she said, he said grimly. You got to understand that he just said something that was very grim. But my other favorite thing is, if I were giving any kind of a tip, it would be from reading all the books that I have so many eBooks, and they're, mostly newer books, and that is coming up with fresh metaphors. And things have just been blowing me away reading the metaphors of some of these new, or I don't know, that new, but new favorite authors for me. And not that I want to, if I want to mention a couple of metaphors, can I say who the author was, and then I'm okay?
Give us one. Give us a good one.
Just give you a good one. Okay, this one is a J.T. Geisinger, and she's the point of view character. We're in her head, and she's just looking into the eyes of this guy that now they both know that they're madly in love, right? And she says what she sees is entire cities are burning to the ground behind his eyes. And I'm just like, whoa. Yeah. Okay, loved it. So anyway, metaphors and adverbs.
Great. Thanks, Debbie. Great writing tips. My interview this time is with the acclaimed Christopher Vogler, keynote speaker at this year's WriterCon, and he's been somebody I've been trying to get for a long time. I actually met him many years ago when I was the president of Novelists Inc. He was our keynote speaker there, and I had the pleasure of introducing him and meeting him, and I've pretty much been trying to get him to my conference ever since, and finally it's happening, so I'm not letting any lockdown spoil that. He will be presenting at WriterCon this year. As you may already know, Vogler has been involved not only in books but in the film industry. In fact, he was working at Disney when he was first exposed to the work of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, these mythological constants that Campbell found in storytelling throughout the ages, and started applying that to the work they were doing there. Wrote a memo that swept virally all throughout the Disney Corporation, and he ended up working on The Lion King, Aladdin, and a lot of other wonderful films. His best-known book is The Writer's Journey, and just to tell you how influential that book is, it's just been released in a special 25th anniversary edition. Here's what Christopher had to say. Chris, thanks for being on the podcast.
This is a great pleasure. Glad to be with you.
I have a traditional first question about the first question that I ask people, which I did not warn you about at all. So here I'm springing it on you. If you could give an aspiring writer one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would say just do your thing every day and make it part of your normal deal. And I believe in this thing from The Artist's Way, which is a great book by Julia Cameron. She talks about morning pages, and it's just a way of warming yourself up every day so that it becomes almost muscle memory. And so if you're starting out, writing might be an intermittent thing for you that you do every once in a while, but it's really got to become part of a daily hygiene almost of getting stuff off your chest and training your hands and fingers and eyes to do that so that it becomes, oh, what's wrong? I haven't written today. I've got to make that agreement with yourself.
Yeah. Oh, man after my own heart. That's exactly what I would have said myself. Chris, you are our keynote speaker this year at WriterCon. People have been telling me, and for that matter, even before everybody kept telling me, get Christopher Vogler, I remembered when I was president of Novelists Inc., and you were our keynote there, and people still talk about what a powerful experience it is hearing you speak. And of course, everybody loves The Writer's Journey. When was that first published?
It's we're calling it the 25th anniversary edition. That's a little bit of a fudge. It was actually about 27 years ago. So back somewhere around 1996 or so. It's been in the works all that time, and goes back at least 25 to 27 years.
Well, 25th anniversary sounds cool. Is there new material in this edition?
Yes, I tried to freshen it up a little bit. First of all, there was a lot of little editorial things, like I recommended that people watch movies on VCRs and things like that that kind of have a hollow ring these days. So we rid the book of most of that. But I stuck my neck out into new territory. Over the last few years, I've been working with ideas around something called the chakra system, which comes from Eastern philosophy. And simply put, they imagine there are different spiritual centers up and down the spine, and they control different things like the heart and the throat and the power center down around the navel, and the sex and elimination centers lower in the body. And I thought about this because when I was working for the studio system and I had to comment on scripts and really try to sell people on the idea, you should read this script. This is a good story, good possibility for us. I found I was pointing to these different centers and saying, it got me here and here. And I'd point in a good script to maybe 2 different centers, that it got me in the throat, it choked me up, but it also made my heart race, or it tightened me up in the guts, and then it lifted the top of my head off with some revelation at the end. I realized that there were circuits, and that this is a good way to think about targeting these areas in the body, because I feel it's really communicating with an audience, and writing is really about touching the emotions, but through the organs of the body, and that we're really in the business of activating these different centers. And so you feel something when you read or watch a story.
Now, you've said that the original Writer's Journey take was inspired by the work of Joseph Campbell. Do you think these 2 systems, Campbell and chakra, blend together well?
Yes, they do, actually, because Campbell had a belief, I think, about the hero's journey that, okay, it's this interesting literary form, and it's very persistent, and it's very entertaining, but he saw it as an encoded set of instructions about how to achieve a higher level of consciousness, that there was a lot of hidden suggestion in there about the stages you go through as you're trying to achieve enlightenment. And the chakra system is related to this too, because theoretically you move upward through the chakras from the lower things, the animal things, to the higher and more spiritual levels as you go up towards the top of the head. And so there's quite a bit of overlap in those 2 systems.
Take us through the story, if you would, where this book came from. Once upon a time, at least 27 years ago, you were working at Disney. Is that right?
Yes, I had found my way to Disney through a pathway, which basically was, as a kid, enjoying fairy tales that were read to me by my mother and grandmother, and also watching movies and going to the drive-in and seeing old movies on TV and so forth. I was fascinated by the similarities and the patterns that I saw, and also just really blown away and quite physically affected by the wonderful stories. And I wanted to know, how do they know how to make this thing so exciting? And if they're taking a historical character or adapting something from Charles Dickens, let's say, how do they know what to put in and what to leave out, and how to change things and how to emphasize? All these questions were in my mind. So I was on a quest looking for the book. Where's the guidebook? Where's the rule book for this? And I couldn't find anything in film school. It was all seat of the pants. And we didn't have any screenwriting books at that time, if you can imagine that, when the world is now flooded with them.
Right.
But I was looking for the unwritten rules. And I found them in the work of this man, Joseph Campbell. Fortunately, some film professor heard me mention an interest in mythological